Hi, it's Mrs. Cheney here today, and I want to talk to you about one of my favorite art movements of the world. I just find them to be so relaxing and pretty to look at, not because they're just pretty paintings or they're girly paintings or they're flowery paintings. It's about the brush strokes. My whole thoughts on painting are this. If I can take a photograph, a photograph of something, it looks realistic. If I create a painting of something, I want to see those brush strokes. So to me, Impressionism is a masterful, beautifully done technique of painting an image in a setting. I do like how most pieces are done what's called in plein air, outside, on location, and I think that's really cool as well. Impressionism, it took place during the second half of the 1800s. And during that time, a lot of things were going on. The first U.S. railroad was completed. The first public telephone was made. The first steel furnace was made. The Brooklyn Bridge opened during this time. A lot of inventions. The Industrial Revolution was huge, okay? Impressionist painters that I want to talk to go on and on for hours, and I don't want this video to be too long, but you've got Manet, James Abbott, it's Edvard Manet, James Abbott McNeill Whistler, Pierre Auguste Renoir, Edgar Degas, Mary Cassatt, one of the few women that hung out with these guys, Pierre Auguste Rodin, and Claude Monet, okay? Then we have post-impressionists, if we get to that point. We've got Toulouse-Lautrec, Vincent van Gogh, Gauguin, Paul Gauguin, George Seurat, Paul Cézanne, Camille Pissarro, my favorite, and Henri Rousseau. Camille Pissarro is my favorite, not Henry. Henry is known for jungle scenes, and Pissarro's are more beautiful gardens. When I go and look at those, especially at the the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art, and I look at Pissarro's, I stand there and almost cry. They're so beautiful. Here's an Impressionism painting, and the idea is that when you look at it, it's like a first glimpse or a quick impression of a scene. Kind of like blurry. Like if you just looked really quick and looked back, that's your first impression. There's a lot of texture. It's about capturing light, not dark, but light. And throughout the day, light changes. You know how the sun rises in the east, sets in the west, shadows change, things move. So these artists had to paint very quickly to capture the moment. They very seldom used black paint. They would mix their own darks using umbers, alizarin crimson, phthalo blue, things like that to create these darker pigments, okay? But light was huge. Before we go on, there's one place in particular I want to talk about, and that is the Salon. The Salon was France's official public exhibition for members of the Royal Academy of Painting and Sculpture. It began in 1667. The Salon was originally held once a year in a large room. As an artist, you had to be invited to exhibit in the Salon. Okay? Many artists wanted to exhibit here, but critics made fun of their work, and they called it sloppy. The Impressionist painters, they wanted to get in there, and the critics didn't like their stuff. This group of painters continued on, and they formed their own group called the Salon des Refuses. I don't know if I'm saying that right. In 1863, this group of refused people from the Salon got together and created their own group of painters. Well, then critics started reading about these artists, and they saw their stuff, and they were like, it's all about quick impression. It's not very famous. It's not very well rendered. I'm at a loss for words here today, not famous, but not well rendered. You got to remember, years before this, during the classical time period, the Romantic time, neoclassical, things were about photorealism. And so when people looked at Impressionist paintings, they were like, what the heck? This girl's got no face. Where are her hands? They're just little blobs. Oh my gosh, I think there's tiny little lips there, but I'm not so sure. And critics tore it apart. They thought this art was crap. And because of the negativity that it caused, they got a lot of attention. These beautiful paintings were brought to light because of negative attention in the papers. Again, it's all about beautiful brush strokes, capturing an image. You can kind of see what's there, but it's just a first glimpse. One of the first paintings that was ever done and submitted to the Salon was done by Claude Monet, and he called it Impression Sunrise. It was shown in an exhibit in 1874, but a critic used the word to make fun of all the works in the show. The artist later adopted this word, and they called themselves the Impressionists. Okay, this was called Impression Sunrise, one of the very first pieces. Again, more beautiful, impressionistic pieces. These artists use a technique called optical mixing, or the applying of broken up color. Monet, for instance, used a dab of yellow next to a dab of green instead of blending them together, so he let the viewer's eye blend them together. So we see this as tan or peach. But if you analyze it, it's little dots of white and yellow and blue and pink and red and orange, and we optically mix them to create colors. Okay? So, the who, what, where, when, why. This all took place in the late 1800s. It was considered sloppy. They wanted to study how light reflected on objects. They used optical mixing. The Salon was really important. It began in 1667. And this new group of the refused people in the Salon started up in 1863, and that was the Impressionists. Who are all these famous Impressionist painters? This is a page that would be really good in your notes. So to pause it now and write this down would probably be, good thing to do. Here are some of the Impressionists I want to touch on quickly, okay? The first one is Edward Manet, okay? He was actually the unofficial leader. He was the one that started the group. He just wasn't very outspoken. The outspoken person was Monet, and people tend to confuse Manet and Monet. But Manet, the younger man, did most of the work, okay, and got most of the attention from his pieces. He tended to do groups and figurative studies. This is called the Pfeiffer. His stuff isn't really blurry. There's a portrait of Lisa, I think. Happy New. This is called The Railway. But he is known for doing figurative pieces. He worked with chalk and paint. This one's really cool. The bar at Folies Bergère. I love to discuss it in class about the reflection. This lady standing at a bar, and is this a reflection of a mirror behind her? Is this her? It's a huge controversy, and if you sit here and analyze it for hours on end, you're not so sure when you leave. Then you've got James Abbott McNeill Whistler. He is known for using terms that are musical in his titles. For instance, arrangement in Black No. 5. Here's a figurative piece. A nocturne. Or you've got symphony in white. So he used musical terms. He is most famous for Whistler's Mother. Arrangement, again, arrangement is used in gray and black, No. 1. If you ever see Schoolhouse Rock, maybe you see the old lady rocking in the rocking chair on that program for children, and this image is used quite a bit. Renoir, one of my favorites. He is friends with Claude Monet. He got his first job working in a china factory, painting flowers on dishes. I think it's kind of cool. As a teenager, he worked there, and through his adulthood, that's how he made a living, until he started painting on his own and created figurative pieces. I think his figures are beautiful. Here he is painting his best friend Claude in the garden. Claude and he went to art school together. We haven't talked about Claude Monet yet. Luncheon of the Boating Party is another famous piece that I love to discuss. You've got groups of people on a paddle boat having lunch, this woman kissing her dog on the table. Really cool pieces. Girl with a watering can. The watering can is hard to see because it's green on the dark blue dress. Portrait of Paul. And the meadow. Again, figures. Often large groups of people, but not always. His daughters he painted as well. And then you've got Claude Monet. That's Manet's friend. He's known for doing these parasol pieces. And he liked to study light and how it changed on things. He often would find a subject and paint it over and over and over during different times of day, like water lilies. Water lilies is actually a triptych done in 3 panels. This, I believe, is the left-hand side. Here in Kansas City, we have one at the Nelson. We have the left-hand piece. Here is Japanese footbridge. Love the piece. Remember, he's the one that started Impression Sunrise, that started this mess. And here is Rouen Cathedral, one that he painted many, many times, different times of day. He rented an apartment across from Rouen Cathedral in Paris and stayed there for a whole year. And he would paint it with the sun rising, with the sun setting, in the winter months, in the summer months, in the fog, over and over and over. He did it again with haystacks. Different haystacks during different times of day and different seasons. He did series. Edgar Degas is known for painting ballerinas. He did many, many dancers at shows. He oftentimes would go into the dance halls and do sketches, and then he would go back to his studio and create compositions from his quick gestures. Remember, dancers move. They don't hold still like this, okay? These women were not holding still. So he'd do quick sketches, gestures, and then go back to his studio and make up compositions to create his paintings. Mary Cassatt, one of the only women to ever paint during this time, she was friends with these men. She was from America. She did go to art school, and she came over, and it was during a time when women were supposed to stay home with their children. And so all of her pieces are women and children. I like this one, Girl in a Blue Armchair. See little puppy? A lot of women and children. Now, there is a sculptor that is considered an impressionist, okay? Pierre Auguste Rodin, okay? He created sculptures in what was considered an impressionist technique. During the time of the Impressionists, his sculptures were not smooth like Michelangelo's. His sculptures had a lot of detail to them, a lot of texture to them. And so the play of light would happen on them as well, just like Impressionist painters. He is most famous for a statue that started out with this piece, okay? He planned a gigantic work called the Gates of Hell, which he never finished. It supposedly would have rivaled Michelangelo's statue in the Sistine Chapel, but because of frequent interruptions, he never finished it. But while creating this mock-up, there was one part of it here at the top of the Gates of Hell. It had to do with the statue called the Thinker. This is supposed to be Dante, sitting here, the poet Dante, contemplating it. And after that, he created giant figurative statues of it, and 9 statues were cast from one mold, and they're all over the world. So this is considered an Impressionist statue. So in a nutshell, you've got Manet, who painted portraits and bar scenes, Monet, who painted landscapes, Renoir, who painted portraits, Whistler, who painted neutral colors and used musical terms in his titles, Degas, whistle, ha ha ha, that's how I remember, whistling, symphony, music. Degas painted dancers, Mary Cassatt painted mothers and children, MC, like Miss Cheney or Melissa Cheney. Rodin sculpted in an Impressionist style.